In general, when a function is called, it will do some sort of manipulation on the values within that function. A variable, for example, might have a value of 10 when the function is called, and after the function has performed its operations, the variable's value might be 20. If you were to call that function again later in your script, it will reset all the values back to what they were when the function was called the first time, in this case namely 10. You might need to have the function save the values within the function between function calls, and you do this by using the static statement. So you would define your function as usual, and then you would use the static statement to save the state of a variable between function calls. Let's have a look at a practical example. In this example, we'll create a function in which we will declare a variable in the static statement. Start again. In this example, we'll create a function that stores the value of a variable between function calls. It also increments the value of that variable each time that the function is called. It will then echo that value onto the screen, and we can then see how the function stores the value of the variable and increments it each time that the function call is made. We'll start off again with our opening and closing PHP tags. Then we need to define our function. We'll call the function numCalls. We're not going to pass any arguments to the function. Then we'll define a variable. We'll just call it num. And we'll set the value to 0. We'll come back to that in a second. Then we need to increment the value of that variable by using the increment operator. And then we also want to see the value, so we need to echo the value to the screen. Now at this point in time, the function will reset the value of the variable num back to 0 each time the function is called. So in order to prevent this and in order to save the value of the variable between function calls, we use the static statement. Then we need to make the function call so that we can echo the value of the variable num onto the screen. So we'll call the function just once initially. And then we can see it outputs the value of 1 to the screen. This we would expect, as we initially defined the value of the variable num to be 0. We then incremented it by 1, and then we echoed that value out. So 0 plus 1 obviously equals 1. Now we would expect that the function saves the value of the variable num between function calls. So let's call the function a few more times. We'll copy and paste. We'll hit save. Now we would expect it to output the value 1 the first time round, as we saw previously. And then we would expect it to save that value and increment it by 1 each time the function is called. So we would expect it to output 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 onto the screen. Let's go to our browser and see if this is the case. Let's hit refresh. And there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it has saved the value of the variable between function calls. Let's remove the static statement. Now we would expect it to output 5 ones because it does not save the state of the value of the variable between function calls. Let's go back to the browser. We'll hit refresh. And then we can see the illustration of how the static statement works.